All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another Launch Minnesota Friday Forum, our very first of 2024. If this is your first one, welcome. If this is not your first one, welcome back. We do these on the fourth Friday of every month, and it's always on a different topic that affects startup founders in Minnesota and beyond. So today we are talking about crowdfunding, which is something that a lot of startups are interested in as they're considering alternative funding possibilities. And a lot of people, when we think of crowdfunding, our mind first goes to Kickstarter, but it's become so much more than that for startups. And so today I'm lucky to be joined by Jeff Bennett, Justin Renfro, and Wes Weirson, who are going to be helping us out today and talking a little bit about that experience. But before we get going, I want to introduce Launch Minnesota's new director, Rob Simperman.
Thank you, Maddie, and thank you everybody for joining. I guess I still get to be a new director for maybe a couple more days. I've got 2-3 months in now. Thrilled to be here with all of you. I see a few familiar faces and names. Great to be a part of this, and really excited to see the discussion here in the Friday Forum. I think it's a great initiative we've got here, and really excited to hear from all of you. Your feedback both on this one and what you'd like to see more of going forward. Thank you, Maddie.
Cool. Thanks, Rob. All right, well, let's get into it. Panelists, could you introduce yourselves, please? We'll start with Jeff.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for joining on a Friday morning. Jeff Bennett, CEO and founder of Merari Medical. We're a sexual health and wellness company. We are using neural stimulation to delay an ejaculation, which affects 30% of men. 30% of men can't last more than 2 minutes in the bedroom. Most people are surprised when you hear about that because it's not a topic that society and men generally want to talk about. And in addition to that, there's another 40% of men that don't meet the clinical criteria, but simply want to last longer. So we've developed a wearable skin patch that you wear during intercourse that delivers mild electrical impulses to delay an ejaculation. So we're pre-revenue. We're just in the very back end of completing all the safety studies that we need to submit to the FDA. And we're hopeful we'll submit to the FDA by the end of March, early April, and be selling product later this summer.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. And Justin, thank you so much for joining us. Could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about WeFunder?
Hi, everyone. My name is Justin. I'm calling in from San Diego, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Over the past 5 years, I've led a team at WeFunder, helping founders raise capital, on WeFunder. And what I love most about my job is we work with all different industries, companies big and small, at different stages, at different life cycles in their company, pre-revenue, Series B. So I just love the range and diversity of different types of companies that we see and support on WeFunder. I think that's the coolest part about kind of crowdfunding is, opening it up to a lot of different companies and a lot of different investors. So I see my role as a steward of entrepreneurship, trying to give founders tools and encouragement because fundraising is very, very hard. And it doesn't matter if you're crowdfunding or if you're raising from angels or any other form of, fundraising, it's really hard. So WeFunder just tries to make it a little bit easier. And I'm excited to chat more about that today.
Cool. Thanks. And Wes.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me on the call. Happy to chat about our successes using WeFunder and regulation crowdfunding to raise some significant capital for our company. So at Leah Labs, we're building living therapies for pets and their people. So what that means is we engineer living cells so they can do what we want them to do, in our case, to fight cancer in pet dogs. We have ran a couple small pilot studies at a couple institutions, including the University of Minnesota. And we've recently won some really fun grants, and we're getting back into running more pilot studies to further develop our product to help fight cancer in dogs. We've been supported by Launch Minnesota since almost inception, since like early 2019 is when we won our first grant. So been great to have this funding. And yeah, happy to talk about WeFunder and our success there. We've raised two separate rounds of around $400,000 on WeFunder at two different life cycles, or two different parts of our company life cycle. So happy to chat about that too.
Cool. Thanks. Well, it's a good transition into what you just mentioned. Let's talk about the difference between, like I said earlier, a lot of people think crowdfunding is just Kickstarter. So what exactly is regulation crowdfunding?
I'll let Justin go with that one.
I can take that one. So with GoFundMe, you're kind of looking for a donation. So typically nonprofits use GoFundMe or impact, cause related fundraising goes through GoFundMe. Then you've got like Kickstarter and Indiegogo. Generally speaking, Kickstarter and Indiegogo is an exchange. It's a pre-purchase. It's you're getting your first customers. So generally speaking, that's for like a consumer product. A lot of consumer products use Kickstarter or Indiegogo, where it's like, give me $300 now and you'll be on the first list of customers that I send this cool invention to. If you go to GoFundMe or Kickstarter and Indiegogo, you'll kind of see what types of companies are using those types of platforms. WeFunder is slightly different in that we're offering investments into the company. So there's some expectation of like, I am an investor. It reflects more of angel investing and how that works, where you're pitching your vision for where this company could be over the next 5 to 10 years. And you're bringing investors in that are going to follow that journey. And so it's a much different sell. You're selling something different, but the mechanism and the crowdfunding portal, they all look similar, but they're very different in terms of how companies utilize these different avenues. So those are three very common ones.
Got it. Thanks. Now, let's talk with our founders. What prompted your business to pursue crowdfunding as a funding resource, and how successful has your company been with that strategy? Jeff?
Yeah, we honestly debated whether or not we should do it for several months, in fact, a couple of years, because we had heard from the venture capital community that venture capital looks at crowdfunding as the funding of last resort. And we didn't really want to, go down that path if that was true. So we did some research and ultimately decided that because we're a consumer goods type product, that we wanted to start building a community of people that supported us, but also a community that we could reach out to help in our planning and education and marketing plan. So, for us, it was a way to raise money, and we raised $650,000 from the campaign. But more importantly, it's kind of validating what we're doing. To have investors invest their money, many of which are non-accredited investors, but are just believing in an idea, gave us that data point that we're using with other investors to say, this is valid. We've got this crowdfunding success. And then again, it's that community that we can reach out to test ideas, anything from packaging to messaging to whatever. This is an engaged group of people that want to see us succeed, because if we succeed, they're going to succeed. So ultimately, those factors went into us making the decision to do it. And then the other part was, because we're FDA regulated, we got to be careful in how we promote the product. But in a crowdfunding campaign, we were testing messages. We were testing things such as, the value proposition, because in order for someone to make an investment, they got to believe in what we're doing. So it allowed us to test those messages where maybe we couldn't if we didn't have a crowdfunding campaign going on.
Mm-hmm. And what platform did you use?
We used WeFunder,
Okay.
and we evaluated all the different platforms out there. We decided that we were too early for Kickstarter, Indiegogo. So it was really between, Republic, WeFunder, and Start Engine. But selected WeFunder, and they were a great group to work with. We had that one-on-one, relationship with them, and I'm sure we'll probably get into that more later. But WeFunder was what we chose.
Cool. Wes?
Yeah, so I think what Jeff touched on is a really good point about kind of what WeFunder is starting to talk about Reg CF as, or has been for a year and a half or 2 years now, is what they call community rounds. So trying to bring in your investor community, or the community who's interested in your product, to come in and support your business by buying equity in the company. So, what Jeff started to say though as well, how VC used to look at this as like a last resort option. Quite frankly, I'm very open about this. WeFunder for us was sort of a last resort option. We got our first check from the seed accelerator Y Combinator when I was still a graduate student, and we had yet to run an experiment. And in the 3 months from getting accepted into YC to being able to go pitch to VC, we just didn't accomplish enough really to raise from VC and to raise from angels even. And our company was on the verge of death. And I learned about WeFunder through Y Combinator and started talking to, I don't know if I initially talked to you, Justin, but certainly Johnny initially. And we launched a campaign, and that campaign is why we're still here today. So in that first campaign, we raised $465,000 just from, people who wanted what we're building to exist in the world because they had lost a pet with cancer, or, they just loved their dogs. And so that was really great. Because we raised on WeFunder, we were able to be alive long enough to see some of our grant funding come in, including the Launch Minnesota grants. So during our WeFunder campaign, we ended up winning, $400,000 in grant funding. We ended up using our 465K on WeFunder to leverage into raising an additional 500K for our, pre-seed round. We hit our milestones, and we're like, all right, let's use WeFunder again, because we knew we had this community of investors who wanted to invest again. They had always been asking on the WeFunder platform, when are you going to raise another round? We want to invest again. So we used WeFunder again. We raised about $400,000 as, the initial kind of the lead check into our $2 million seed round. So we really just dove into the belief that WeFunder is a really awesome way to raise capital. And certainly, the regulations have changed. I'm sure we can talk about that. And, it's not viewed as the last resort anymore. There are companies who are raising millions and millions of dollars on WeFunder, and it's really well accepted. So it's been exciting to see the transition.
Cool. Yeah. Justin, tell us a little bit more about WeFunder. How has WeFunder helped startups fund their businesses, and sort of what differentiates it from other platforms?
Yeah, I'll just address the other platforms first. We're a public benefit corporation, very mission focused. We're not perfect, as Wes and Jeff know, but I think we genuinely have the best interest of founders. We want to help them. We want to be flexible. I think we're really good at customer service and operations generally. And I think that, we're very focused on this is the type of company that's good on WeFunder. Let's optimize WeFunder for that company. So there's not a lot of bells and whistles. We're not doing a ton of other things. We're just focused on getting our operations and, our infrastructure solid so that it's relatively painless for founders. I think that the way to look at WeFunder is kind of twofold. The first is marketing and brand, and the second is operations and legal infrastructure. So on the marketing and brand, you create a campaign page that looks similar to a pitch deck, but it has a video and it has a Q&A and it has updates on your company, and you can incorporate more kind of you can really tell your story, and you should take a lot of time to make sure that story is right. And WeFunder is a good playground, to Jeff's point, on we're experimenting with different messaging, we're trying different things, but the most important piece is that it's a brand asset, and it tells your story, and you have a URL to your company that you can cast a wide net. Anybody can come learn about your company on WeFunder with this link. I think that's really valuable. I think it's cool that you can kind of throw it to friends and family, and throw it to, kind of customers, and throw it to professional contacts and people, anybody can engage. It might be this random person saw it, reached out, I had a conversation with them, and now they're introducing me to all their friends. That's generally where WeFunder becomes very, very, valuable. It's random people in your network might be interested in investing, and by having a brand asset that you can throw out to the wild, you might find new people that are interested in what you're doing. So that's kind of the first piece. The second piece is the legal and the operations infrastructure. And that's, you know, getting all your investment contracts in one place, facilitated by WeFunder. You don't have to negotiate. It's all in one central place. All of those investors go onto one line in your cap table. All of the legal and compliance is kind of facilitated in one, in one place. So you can have 100 people come in and, from a logistics and an operations and the investment contracts and the compliance, all of that is kind of like managed and controlled by WeFunder. So on that end, it's kind of like get your ducks in a row so that you can go fundraise. And if you do it right on WeFunder, it kind of, trickles into kind of like Reg D angel investments quite easily. It's like all your ducks are in a row so you can go raise from investors, period. Whether that be on WeFunder or off of WeFunder, that infrastructure and that kind of like operations are in place. Where I get most excited, obviously, is the rah brand stuff where it's like, hey, we're curing cancer in dogs. That's like a powerful kind of like lead to get people's attention and facilitate new investor conversations for Wes.
Awesome. Very cool. Great. What key factors, and this question is for everyone, what key factors do you believe contribute to a successful crowdfunding campaign for a startup? And how do you engage those potential backers? Jeff, you want to start us out?
Yeah, before answering that, I just want to expand on a comment that Justin made is, one of the things that we found with the WeFunder campaign is you just don't know who's going to invest. We set a minimum of $200 and we had a lot of $200 investors, but we had someone that invested $50,000 into the company through the campaign. They never contacted us. I didn't know them. It was a female out in Southern California. I tried to call her just to thank her for it and find out, her story. And eventually I made that connection and we talked. Well, she now has invested another $50,000 into the company. Her boyfriend is a super experienced consumer goods guy who's got connections with a billionaire owner of the Ultimate Fighting that will serve as a connection. So you just don't know who you're going to run across. And that's kind of scary, but at the same time that's kind of I wouldn't say the gamble, but you just don't know. And in that case, that was someone that I'd never met before. She just loved what we're doing. She had invested in WeFunder companies in the past and just thought what we were doing was super cool. So that was one of the unanticipated surprises of the campaign. Now, I wish I had some more of those out there, but that's just a good example of you just don't know what you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I'm sorry. I just got excited about that. What was your question?
No, that's good. That's a great comment. Really cool. No, I was wondering, so what do you think contributes to a successful crowdfunding campaign and how do you find those potential backers? Either the $200 ones or the $50,000 ones?
Yeah, well, WeFunder, for us, did a really good job of kind of setting the expectations and what you need to do to have a successful campaign. And have a successful campaign, you need to get out of the gates really fast, right? You need to get your friends, get your family, get others to know what you're doing, and also make those initial investment, because that early traction then dictates kind of where you appear on their page. So I don't know the WeFunder algorithms, how they all work, but if you get a lot of traction happening, they're going to do what they can to kind of promote you and put you in places where that gets amplified by their audience. So it's both good and bad, right? If you don't have that traction, then maybe you're going to be somewhere where you're not really seen. But in our case, we really spent the time, based on WeFunder's direction, getting those, first few people to make those investments, because you do that, then it's kind of spreads and it amplifies. So getting that community up front is really important. And then also, developing that campaign pitch. I think Justin mentioned that. We ended up working with a third-party marketing agency that focuses on crowdfunding campaigns to help us design the page. You can do it yourself, but we felt this is so important that we really wanted to work with an outside agency that specialized in it. So they helped kind of reframe our message, the visuals, the graphics, and the videos that we used on the campaign, we actually did ourselves. That was one of the recommendations that our WeFunder rep said, is you don't have to have these professional polished videos. It can be literally from your own phone. So I did that with my 21-year-old daughter. We filmed, and those videos appeared on our page. So those, I believe, set us up for success in the campaign.
Mhm. Cool. Wes, what about Leah Labs? What do you think makes a good crowdfunding campaign? What worked for you guys?
Yeah, so I'll answer that, but something Jeff said again, got me thinking about how he just woke up one day and he had a $50,000 investor. Like we had one of my friends, more adult friends, invested like 20,000 or 15 or 20,000, and like I would have never ever asked them for an investment. I didn't know they were interested in that. I knew that they had dogs and they loved their dogs, but like you just don't know who is in your network who might be moved by something in your company. So that's just a cool reason to raise on WeFunder. But our perspective of this is really shaped by the two really distinct periods of time that we raised. So the first time we raised on WeFunder, there was like 50 companies. Now there's like, I don't know what the latest number is. I haven't really paid attention. Justin could illustrate this, but the second round that we raised was when there was like 250 companies or like 300 companies. And so the noise level, who was standing out versus like, what they were building. I think that, consumer tech or like SaaS products who like have users, I think have a lot better chance because they have email lists, they have users, they have, a brand out there. For some biotech company or like really hard tech company, pending what it is, Adam Limbs has been extremely successful on WeFunder because they have this futuristic, looking arm for people who need prosthetics, right? And so like I think it truly is just a marketing campaign. And so for a hard biotech company like us, really kind of trying to explain the science in very distinct and clear ways is really helpful. And just trying to get someone excited, right? Everyone has a dog. If you've had 3 dogs in your life, you've definitely lost one to cancer. Those are just the odds, 1 or 2. And so, I think email lists certainly help. The first campaign we used Facebook ads. That was really great. I think the value of those has fallen a little bit with more people raising and just the more excitement around Reg CF. Justin could speak to some of that. But yeah, just going out and talking about it as much as you can, posting on LinkedIn all the time. You kind of have to be shameless about, hey, we're doing this. This is this new thing. Anyone can invest, and you could become a millionaire if you invest in the next Uber with $100 check. So that's really kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah. Justin, what are your thoughts?
I think for me, shameless was a good word. You do have to kind of like, it's like I've had 2 founders over the past year that raised almost the entirety of, like I think one raised like 350, one raised $1 million purely from texting every single person in their phone with just like, hey, I'm raising capital right now. I wanted to see if you might be interested. Here's the link to check out more. Let me know if you'd be open to setting up a call. That's a daunting task, to be honest, to send that to every single person in your phone and just like, sprinkle that out across everyone that you've ever taken the time to put in your phone. But you never really know who might be interested in investing. You don't know what someone's bank account looks like. You don't know if they're interested in investing in startups. So you might as well ask. Doesn't hurt. And, it's like, if you're willing to go through that process of texting hundreds of people that are in your cell phone, you might find some really cool, interesting people that are excited about what you're doing, that are excited about startups, that think investing in startups is super cool, that want to have a conversation with you. But those people aren't going to find you unless you text them. And it's like 10 different flavors of that, where it's like posting on LinkedIn a lot, writing really thoughtful emails, going to events like the San Diego Angel Conference, where you can meet more angel investors, which Wes and Jeff both did. It's just a process of activity where it's like you have to put yourself out there because people won't come to you. You have to go to them. And how that actually translates in practice, I've seen 100 different tactics work. I've seen 1,000 different tactics not work. And so a lot of the stuff that you try isn't going to generate any movement on your fundraise, but maybe one thing that you try will generate lots of movement on your fundraise. So it's really a game of activity, and there's a lot of L's, but to Jeff's point, it's like, one person found me, wrote a $50,000 check and started introducing me to really rich people. It's like, that's very pragmatic. That's how fundraising works, especially for those that it's their first time fundraising. They don't have an established network. They have to go build this community of investors from the ground up. Most founders don't have an established network where they can make a few phone calls and raise capital. So you have to go out and hustle. And I would say this is irrelevant of crowdfunding. I would say this is how fundraising works. WeFunder is just an extension of many fundraising rounds where folks are going and talking to angels and trying to find VCs and trying to bring in more institutional investors. It's the same process. You're doing the same thing. You're putting yourself out there and trying to find people that, you know, buy into your vision and want to invest and support that.
Nice.
Yeah, and I add to that, Maddie, that, you know,
Yeah.
it takes time. I mean, what Justin went through and described is exactly kind of that play card that we used, but it's a lot of work. I mean, to you know, message all the people in your phone, or in our case, what we did, you know, we tried to build as many different email lists as possible to include our homeowners association. You know, I despise probably doing that, but it's like we're going to do as much as we can to get that message out there and that word out there. And by doing that, you know, I don't know how many investors we got from the homeowner association email list, but you got to do whatever you can to get that message out there and amplify it. But you know, it does take a lot of time and effort to do. And what won't work is just, you know, developing the campaign page, put the video, and send out, you know, an email like, hey, invest in us. I mean, you got to be very strategic as who you're targeting, and, you know, and follow through with that, right? It's constant updates. And for us, I mean, that was the big part of 6 months is, you know, whatever little thing that we can, you know, toot our horn about, but to do it, to include just industry knowledge, because it's not only about the company, the product, it's about the industry. And you're serving as an educator on this platform, which I think people want to see before they make an investment.
Yeah. So with crowdfunding then, or with, you know, WeFunder and similar platforms, regulation crowdfunding, do you think it requires a little bit more hustle, or do you sort of find that in any, you know, fundraising effort for startups?
I mean, any fundraising effort requires hustle. You know, talking to angel investors one-on-one, trying to schedule a phone call, trying to schedule phone calls with VC, thinking about what diligence looks like, right? All of that is a hustle. But what I think is really cool about Reg CF or community rounds, or WeFunder in general, Reg CF in general, is how you have this website that's always out there and anyone can find it. And yeah, you're putting in a lot of work, but also you can go to sleep and wake up with a $5,000 check. You don't go to sleep and have an angel investor invest $5,000, you know? And so there's just this, you're working at it all the time, but you're also doing that with angel investors. And you don't just have this platform out there where someone can just, you know, put in their credit card. So I think that's really.
Yeah, one caveat to that, and Wes raised twice, and I don't know if this, you know, was your experience, Wes, but in my experience, you know, it's like round one is a lot of groundwork, getting anybody to kind of jump in and participate. But once they're in, theoretically, you have an opportunity to share updates and talk about the business and showcase momentum and talk about all the cool stuff that's happening around the business. If you do that well, and that's a big if, because a lot of founders don't do it well, but if you do it well, when you cycle back and you're like, we have all this momentum, we're raising for a second time, it should make the process much easier. So theoretically, it's kind of like that first process of getting those investors in the door is very, very challenging. Again, whether with or without a platform, with or without crowdfunding, if you do a good job of building those relationships with the people that come in, circling back to them to have them double down, you know, should be make the second round much easier. So you're kind of like looking at this through a 2-year, you know, perspective, where it might be the first 6 months might be really hard, but you're building a long-term kind of asset that can support the company, making successive fundraising rounds hopefully a little bit easier, especially if the business is doing well.
Right.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I mean, that's exactly right, Justin. Reminds me, I definitely owe an update or two on WeFunder, so I should get to that. But our second round, you know, of those investors from our first round, I don't know the exact number of people. I think it was a couple hundred who reinvested, but it was over $100,000 towards our second round that the first round investors put in. So, a quarter of that round came as soon as we opened it up, opened up the WeFunder the second round. So that was really awesome.
Cool. So let's talk about platforms. Of course, this is the WeFunder brain trust that we have assembled here this morning. But if we take into account things like target audience, project type, funding goals, how do founders know what the right platform is for their campaign?
Well, I'd like to give a huge shout out to John Maychek, who's in the room. John and I met a decade ago when I worked at Kiva. And Kiva is a crowdfunding platform that allows entrepreneurs to raise $5,000 to $10,000 at 0% interest. And John was very helpful in connecting us to cool entrepreneurs that needed a $5,000 to $10,000 0% interest microloan. And I think that when you're thinking about platforms, it's not like WeFunder, Start Engine, or Republic. It's like there's also the Kivas of the world out there that are facilitating crowdfunded capital on a smaller scale. So it's really understanding where your business is at and what platform is kind of designed around where your business is at. John, I don't know if you would have anything to add, because you've seen, my work at Kiva supporting entrepreneurs through crowdfunding and my work at WeFunder supporting entrepreneurs that are raising capital. And, there's just a pragmatic, evaluation of what platform makes the most sense for this business.
Yeah, I would say and first of all, hey, Justin, it's not a one size fits all thing. And there's so many different platforms out there, whether they're on the equity side or even some of the creative financing, like the Kiva, or I think of some lately been used here, like Mainvest is another one that uses a lot of revenue-based, like revenue share financing. There's just a lot out there. And on my perspective, yeah, I often will just share it with certain entrepreneurs saying, if this works for you, not saying it does, but do your homework. And then obviously once I see campaigns up, no matter what the platform, if they're anywhere within the 3-4 state region, I'm always sharing those things out just to kind of spread the word on them.
Yeah, mad love, John. One thing that I would point to on the platforms, especially for bigger raises. So if you're looking to raise like $250K, $500K, $1 million, Kiva wouldn't be relevant to you, but WeFunder would be relevant to you. And, if you do look at the platforms that kind of service that category of company where it's like, hey, we want to raise from VCs one day. We're looking to raise a $500,000 seed round. We're going to, go all in to make that happen. You should see the platform as an extension of your fundraising team. And, we can make your life really painful. We can make your life easier. And what I would focus on is the chemistry and the personality fit between you and the people that are working at the platform that are going to be supporting your raise. So, Wes has a lot of friends at WeFunder. We all support dog. We're a dog company, and I was at a roundtable last week, and our CEO said that Leah Labs was his favorite company that's ever raised on WeFunder, and he told an entire room of 15 people about the Leah Lab story and how he kind of came to WeFunder and how he came for a second round. It was deeply inspiring and cool that was coming from the mouth of our CEO. I think that the chemistry and the personality and the collaboration and the partnership with the people working at the platform are what you should kind of optimize for in picking a portal that's going to host your raise. And I take a lot of pride in, trying to do that in the best way possible and be great partners with founders in their fundraise. Again, we're not perfect, but I think we're better than Start Engine and Republic, who are our two main competitors.
Yeah, and for us, I mean, we went into it not really knowing who the players were, but then realized there were the three primary platforms that Justin just mentioned: WeFunder, Republic, and Start Engine. So honestly, we first approached Start Engine. We kind of got enamored by Mr. Wonderful and his pitches and that whole marketing thing. But Start Engine wanted nothing to do with us. We're a sexual health and wellness company. They're like, yeah, that's not of interest. Sorry, but not interested. And then Republic, we know someone else in the industry that went with them and didn't have a good experience. And then the marketing agency that we were working with said, WeFunder, you got to talk to them. And to Justin Wesley's point is that relationship. We had someone within WeFunder that guided us, held our hand through the whole process, super accessible. And that I think was super important for us because we'd never done it before, and we're going down this area of sexual health and wellness. How do we make sure we've got a successful campaign? And then, as I think Justin mentioned earlier, that legal side of things, there's some heavy lifting that has to occur from the financial audit or financial review that needs to be done, and that's a several $1,000 expense. The agency, and then filing the Form C. WeFunder does all that. I mean, you need to do the work to provide the inputs, but in terms of filing it, they make it super easy. And I think the relationships really were top notch. And I can't speak to how it would be with Start Engine or Republic, but when scouting out who we wanted to work with, we just didn't get that sense of excitement that WeFunder did.
Well, thanks. So I mean, beyond the obvious benefits of crowdfunding, financial, do you think there are other benefits, I guess, beyond just money for, going the crowdfunding route, like Justin touched on earlier, the whole branding thing? Maybe it's good for the company brand, but I'm curious what you guys think. Are there benefits that startups can gain from a successful crowdfunding campaign beyond just monetary support?
I mean, for us, people left in the comments on, why did you invest? Inspiring comments. I lost a dog, we want this to exist in the world, or, all the dogs deserve this, or that kind of thing. So, that's inspiring in the roller coaster ride of building a startup. But then, it's just building that campaign of followers. So, I have people who reach out on LinkedIn, not irregularly, asking, hey, my dog has cancer, can you help? And I think a lot of that is coming from us having this public persona from WeFunder. And eventually that's going to bring some business back to Leah Labs, when we're ready to commercialize our therapy.
Can I share my screen? Is that possible?
Sure. Yeah.
This is just so inspiring to me. This is a big reason I work at WeFunder, and I think it should be kind of like overstated that it's like you're building a community of people that support you and believe in you and want this to exist in the world. Being a founder can be lonely. And, when you look at this, it's like 434 comments from 1,220 investors. This is for Wes's campaign, Leah Labs. If you just read the first couple of these, it's like, my corgi had leukemia. Like, glad to know that that WeFunder made it possible for Leah Labs to continue its research in curing cancer in dogs. Wishing you much success. I love dogs. Like, I want Leah Labs to help my dogs. It's just like 400 of those. That's meaningful. That's not like fluff. That's like real people saying, I want this to exist in the world. That's like a great validation point. And, something I haven't talked to Wes about, but it's like, hey, like, keep these people engaged and like keep sharing how you're progressing and what's going on, and share the bad, share the good, share everything, get them in on the story. The beauty of investing in startups is you're on the first floor. You have like firsthand access. You can go reach out to the CEO and talk to them. And it's like, how do you utilize that to build momentum where it's like, maybe there's a big announcement that Wes has. He's got 1,200 people that could engage on that content and help distribute it to a much bigger audience. It's like, there's a lot of different kind of like, edge cases of where a community of 1,200 investors can add a lot of value to the business.
That's
And
awesome.
it also helps to validate, to VC or to angel investors. It's like, yeah, cool idea, but like, would people actually pay for that? Do you think it's actually needed? Like, I've had that question. I don't know how many people on this call have dogs, but yes, we need better therapies for our dogs. And venture capital sometimes doesn't necessarily see that or doesn't believe that there's a market for it. And this is also now 400 people who have commented, 1,200 people who invested that, help to validate that. These are public, people. Some of them, are retail investors, but some of them are sophisticated investors. And that just really helps to validate the whole idea as well.
Yeah, I would just echo exactly what Wes and Justin said about the value of comments and why people invest. I mean, it's super inspiring, right? To see that from people that you've never met before, and then the ability to use it with potential investors. The other thing, for us is by going through the financial review, and you have to go through this, it just helped, get things in order from a company standpoint, prepare for, future diligence. So that was kind of a side benefit. Now, none of that's fun. It takes work and effort and cost, but when you exit the process being better as a company in terms of, your documents, your message, your financials. So that was one of those unexpected benefits that I didn't expect to get out of the effort.
Very cool. Okay, let's see. Oh, yes, that's right. Okay, this is my last question. So if I want to leave time for people in the audience to ask questions to our panelists, obviously they're very knowledgeable about crowdfunding and everything related to that. So if you have questions, drop them in the comments and we will get to those. Okay, well, let's talk about some common, challenges. So can you share some insights into common challenges that startups face during crowdfunding and what strategies or best practices can help overcome those challenges?
I think the challenge is, finding the time and devoting the time necessary to, develop the campaign and do it right. It's not something that you can just, whip up in, a few hours and fill out some templates on the campaign page. No, I mean, you need to do the diligence and the effort to, whether it's the imagery, the message, the video, that all takes time. And the challenge is you got a bunch of other stuff that you're doing as well. And how do you add this on top of the 1,000 action items that you have? And then, the challenge is, that capital that you need to use in order to develop the campaign. Again, for the financial review, that's several $1,000s to do. Having your legal person involved in reviewing the contract. So there's those expenses. So it's not free. You need to invest something up front in order to get, a successful campaign. And again, we chose to use a marketing agency to help in developing the campaigns because they have a lot of experience with that. If we would have done it ourselves, I don't know if we would have had the success that we did with that.
I'd plus one that it's very hard to find the time. Prioritizing time in your schedule to go out and talk to investors and put yourself out there and network when it's not linear. A lot of stuff with your business is linear. I need to accomplish this. With fundraising, it's a lot more kind of there's a lot of conversations. It's a business development sales cycle. And I think that founders that aren't able to kind of allocate that 10 to 20 hours a week, for a couple months that's needed to be successful, generally struggle and are frustrated. So I think it's really a time constraint to figure out how to allocate time into fundraising. And again, everything that I've said today has extreme relevance to fundraising in general. I think crowdfunding is, kind of one kind of medium for fundraising, but the core principles and the best practices and the mindset and the approach is the exact same.
I'd also add, one of the challenges that we thought we were going to have was, these quote high maintenance investors. By having people invest in the company, then they have access to me and others on the team. And I thought, well, what are we going to open up here? Am I going to get 20 messages a week or day from this group of investors? Honestly, we have not had one person that invested reach out and ask questions or challenge or say, hey, what's going on? So I'm a little surprised by that, but that's something that I was not anticipating. I thought there'd be kind of the needy investors and, the high maintenance folks don't have it.
Wow.
So I
Great.
don't know if that's good or bad, Wes, I don't know if you have any experience on that front or Justin, but I was a little surprised by that. So I don't know what that means, but I'm happy with it.
But we've had a couple like edge cases of a vet invested and wants us to hire their research, their vet tech into our company. And it's like, yeah, exciting. Thank you for the offer. This is not what we're hiring for. That that kind of thing. But they haven't been like, hey, where's my return? Or I want to vote on this, or what's your decision making? That nothing like that.
Interesting. Okay.
One other challenge I'd raise, and it really wasn't a challenge, but just know this going into it, is you need to identify, quote, a lead investor. That was one of the requirements that WeFunder had, is the lead investor doesn't necessarily have to invest the most money into the campaign, but they need to be identified to act and vote on behalf of the investors in the campaign. So, we had to find that person that had the experience and credibility to kind of be that face of the lead investor to the potential investors, but also they had to be comfortable being that person that votes and represents the SPV that's created for the campaign. So again, we didn't know that going into it. And it was kind of, halfway into the process, like, oh, you need a lead investor. Like, oh, well, that would have been nice to know earlier. But that's just something, know that going into it.
That's great. Well, let's move to questions. We got a couple in the chat here. How long does a round stay open, and what are the costs related to crowdfunding?
I can answer that. So the costs associated with fundraising on WeFunder is we charge 7.5% of the money raised. That's our business model. And then typically founders pay for reviewed financials, which is part of the SEC requirement. That generally costs like $3,000 to $4,000. So that's kind of, the costs all in on WeFunder's front. In terms of the time, I think most founders go in with the hope that it's going to take 2 months for them to raise the capital that they need. And in reality, it generally takes 6 to 12 months to raise like half of your goal, especially in the first round. It's just like way harder than folks anticipate. So I think for your first serious capital raise, you're typically looking at like, say 6 months of, like active fundraising to, get that initial capital that you need to kind of like, all right, we're on our way. I don't know if that was your experience, Wes and Jeff, but in the hundreds of founders I've supported on WeFunder, I think 6 to 9 months is, typically what we see for like first serious capital raise.
Yeah, that's consistent with our approach, our method as well. And we were raising kind of during Thanksgiving and the holidays, and we were advised, by the WeFunder folks, like, expect that there's going to be this slowdown, and also expect that you're going to see, and when you first launch it, you're going to see this initial rush of people, getting into it. And then you're going to see this kind of lull. People are going to kind of sit on the sidelines. They're going to watch the company if they're interested. They're going to want to read the updates, which is why it's so important that you post consistent updates, because people sitting on the sidelines want to see progress. And then when you announce the close of your campaign, then you see another, spike in terms of activity. But that initial spike, I mean, it was kind of addicting. You wake up in the morning, I think Wes said, you look at your message like, oh my God, we got thousands of people, and this many people. You get super excited about it, but then you see this kind of lull phase there. And knowing that going into it, we were prepared for it. But again, the timeline goes longer depending upon the time of year that you're doing the campaign. But the other part of that is that you don't have to wait for the campaign to be done before you can request disbursements of the money. And I forget, Justin, what that dollar threshold is, but we requested certain disbursements and could use that capital for moving the business forward without the campaign being formally closed.
Cool.
Yeah,
So
our first round was 6 months, was the entire period that we're legally allowed to have it be open at that time in 2019. Those rules have changed, I think, as long as you keep reporting your finances or something. But the second round was a lot shorter. We're only open for about 3 months because, again, we just wanted it to kind of be an initial rush as a lead investor into our seed round. And so the 100K from the WeFunder group, I got 100K from our previous angels to come on to WeFunder, and then we raised like 200K over the next 8 weeks.
John, did you have something to add?
Yes, I was going to ask a question to Justin, but I was too lazy to type it in. So I know with WeFunder, there's I don't know if you call it like the friends first, kind of the, where you just kind of mentioned a little bit, but you kind of have to raise it first a little bit to test. You can use it to test out the waters. I think that's even a little bit of the phase. What are some of the rules with that as far as like, because I've got connected to some, either like you've let me know about them, Justin, or I see on your social, or it's some business I know that's doing that. It's kind of a private link that you can only see if you have it. You kind of invest in them, and they're usually set. I don't know if they work with you and say, hey, you guys have to get to 50,000 first before this becomes live. What are maybe some of the rules behind that?
Yeah, so there's no rules around that, but generally we're encouraging founders to kind of raise privately to build momentum, and then raise publicly to kind of broadcast it to the world, where it's like, get people that get prior investors, get people in your circle to kind of build that momentum to be the first ones that show up to the party. And that's a private raise. So I'm working with a company in Minnesota right now. I'll share it in the chat. They've been raising privately to build up that momentum from their immediate network for like 4 or 5 months. And I'm really pumped about this deal. John mentioned revenue share earlier. Revenue share is actually an initiative that I'm leading at WeFunder that's an alternative to equity. And Maza is a really cool Minnesota company that's fundraising on WeFunder right now on a revenue share. And it takes a couple months to get your story straight, to get your video produced, to go build up that initial momentum from your friends and family before you broadcast it to the world. So I think best practice is build momentum from people that and then broadcast it publicly. But there's no time constraints on those, on those pieces. You can be patient, you can go all in on it, it can be passive. Different founders have different timelines and different kind of like, ways in which they're bringing it about. But I think that, the shift from private to public is like, all right, cool. Like, we've got our message down, we've got our assets in place, we feel confident in our pitch, and we're ready to broadcast this out, to a mass audience. And, typically that's not on day one.
I think, coming back to one of your questions previously that kind of ties in here about one of the challenges is the momentum game. So, there's a lot of FOMO involved in this type of investing, in all investing, I guess, even with angels and VCs, where people will sit on the sidelines until they see that you've hit a milestone, or they see that you've hit a certain amount of fundraise, right? There are companies now on WeFunder who are raising 2, 3, 4, up to $5 million. And if Leah Labs only has 100K invested, but then they click around on WeFunder and they see a company has 2.5 million. Well, even if they have dogs, or even if they believe in our mission more than something else, they're like, well, why does this company only have 100,000? The other company has a couple million. It's this momentum game. And so that's where it's really important then to bring your network, do it privately. And then as soon as you go live, you're already live with $300,000, or $500,000 or $100,000 even, in a bet, in some scenarios.
Got it. Okay, cool. Well, great. Look, we have 4 minutes left. So any last minute questions from the audience? I want to prioritize those. All right. If not, then I'll turn it back to the panelists. Any last thoughts or words of wisdom that you'd like to impart to the audience?
I'll start. I mean, I think crowdfunding is here to stay. I think with the environment that, there is with VC fundraising, it's super challenging, and not that crowdfunding is easy by any means, but I think it's a tool that's been validated, that can work. So we're excited to continue to leverage the crowdfunding platform to be able to get to where we want. So we're super excited about it. But again, no going into it. There's time, there's effort, and expense that you need to put into it. It doesn't come with just a few hours of effort.
For sure.
I'll add on to that, where I think it's like mindset is everything when it comes to being an entrepreneur, being a founder, and fundraising. And I wrote this blog post a couple of years ago. I reread it every 6 months or so to just, and it's like, I don't actually need to make any edits to this. It's the same thing. And it's like mindset. What is the right mindset to approach fundraising? What is the right mindset to approach being an entrepreneur? So maybe give that a swirl if you're interested in kind of like where does my head need to be successful when it comes to fundraising?
Yeah, I'll just leave it with, I think this is a super, super awesome mechanism to raise capital. You're giving someone who would never have the chance to invest into a private startup the chance to become a millionaire because they invested in your company. And I think that's really cool and inspiring. And, I've talked to, I always joke every time I get a new introduction to somebody to talk about WeFunder that I'm going to count and keep track, but it's over 25 or 30 different founders I've talked to about WeFunder. So if anyone is interested, find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to find 10 minutes and talk to you a little bit deeper about it, answer any questions you might not want to speak out loud in this forum. So happy to chat.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you so much to our panelists for sharing your knowledge today. This has been awesome. We really appreciate your insights. Congrats to the founders on your success in crowdfunding. I hope it continues. Justin, thanks for providing a platform that's helped so many people get their startup off the ground. And thank you everyone for attending Launch Minnesota's first Friday Forum of 2024. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a wonderful weekend.
Cheers all.
Thanks.